best friends who's on my team this years ago. And I was like, one day I want to run a business where like, it's like a rock star, like Mick Jagger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they give you a song set, your favorite jelly beans, tell you what you know, where the square is on the stage, or the X that you need to stand on, when to get on the bus, and you just go do your thing, and that you're gifted at doing. And I'm like, that's really like the secret sauce, I think, in business, is when you got the best people in each position around you. You know, the problem is finding those best people gets messy. Like finding videographer, finding somebody who does a good podcast, somebody who has a good look and a good vision, you know?
Alex Hormozy, I'm going to fix this really quick just so that the camera looks better.
Alex, I'm afraid too, I'm going to have my head back podcast.
Oh no, you're good. Alex Hormozy was talking about that. And he said the number one mistake he made as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, was having B players. He said the distance between a B player and an A player is so extreme. And so that's why, like, that's my thing. A players only.
He talks about how you can overpay an A player.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it's worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Like double, triple.
Yeah.
So somebody just sent me his new book, $100 million deals.
Yep.
Like, I want to start reading it. I have the most amazing collection of books that I've never read. People buy me two things. They buy me books and bourbon.
Yeah.
And I don't really use.
That's why I didn't buy you either.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy you some underwear.
I wear those. Tommy got me this beautiful gun case, like for my shot.
Oh yeah, you showed me. Yeah, at the office. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Yeah. Jen was no help.
Yeah, right. You came out. That was creative. Up with that one.
Yeah. She did talk about hunting though, so I was like, this will be something that'll last forever. Yeah.
My favorite.
Is that, do you love giving gifts to people? Is that part of like your
I do
love
enjoy
language?
giving gifts. Yeah.
It's not language?
It is not. I don't care if I ever receive them.
Right.
Yeah. So love language that I would like to, like, that I receive would be words of encouragement or words of affirmation.
Yeah.
So I give those out like parade candy. Yeah, for sure.
Are
Absolutely.
people typically not good at the love language that they want to receive? Because I noticed that a lot. Like mine's words of affirmation.
No,
I'm terrible at giving.
I disagree.
I would disagree wholeheartedly. I feel like most people. Yeah.
I can't if I like you, it's genuine. It's hard for me to like bullshit through that.
Yeah.
I get that.
I feel like most people readily give what they're hoping to receive.
That's true.
At least it's what I found.
Acts of service is the one I like to give and receive the most.
Yeah.
Like I'll do anything for folks. I'll work, you know, you need me to carry that, do that.
Yeah.
Volunteer for that. That's what gets me in trouble all the time.
Yeah. I think when you're in a healthy place, it's so easy to say, I'll give away the thing that either I needed the most or the thing that I want the most. I think when it's hardest is when you are like starving for it and you can't receive it because you're not matching that energy, you're not matching the frequency. So when people are in that really hard state where they're not feeling love from others or they're not feeling seen, I'm like, I tell them, go give away the thing that you want the most and watch what happens. So there is like a switch in that energy somewhere.
Yeah.
But I always feel like that flips people in the right direction.
100%.
When it's like, just go give the thing you want, watch what happens.
Yeah. I think that was something that Robin Williams said a lot, was that one of the main reasons that he wanted to bring people joy was because he didn't want anyone to ever feel the way that he had felt.
Wow.
Right? Like lonely, depressed. And I found that to be super true with my own story. You know, like we had talked about, just a lot of trauma and like hatred as a child and being picked on. It becomes super easy to just go, bro, I don't want anybody to ever feel this way. And so then you just start giving it out, you know, because you know what it feels like. So I think there's something true to that.
That's a good segue to the first question I wanted to ask you, which is, what was a time in your life that you remember that you almost lost hope?
Dude, yeah. I think there've been a couple, but one would have been super early on in my childhood. Being raised super poor, dad wasn't very educated, couldn't provide like at a high level. We had left a large church we were at. He went to pastor a home missions church. So I went from like this large thriving youth group to just being the youth group, you know, gained a lot of weight, was picked on a lot, you know, and so when you're in those moments, you just feel like, bro, this is how it's going to be forever. You know, you're like 11 years old. And you're like, things are never going to change, you know? And so it becomes kind of easy to lose hope when you you cannot see a way out of that,
And you told me a story about on the opposite, how that pivot shifted when we were having dinner. So like, what was that hope dealing moment that like, where you feel like, boom, it shifted and you were like, whoa.
Yeah. So I think for me, two things happened at the same time. A really beautiful thing of, okay, because I'm not receiving this at any significant level, I know how to give it and give it really, really well. And then the not so good thing was, if this is the version of me that you want, then I'll just put on a mask and I'll be that guy. Right. And so there was like beauty and pain kind of all happening at the same time. Right. So like, because I'm not receiving this, I know how to give it. I know how to give it really well. I can make people feel super loved and admired and adored and important, all of those things. But also, okay, you guys like this version of Tommy. I'll just be that version when I'm with you. Right. And so that starts a trajectory of years of meeting people and going, okay, if that's the version of me that you want, I can do that,
You became stronger, you told me. You started excelling in sports. You came into your true, you start, taking care of yourself, looking good. You were getting attention.
Yeah, I started like leading worship in front of a church of several hundred people. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, Tommy can sing. Tommy has gifts. Tommy has talents, those sorts of things. And so, you start to feel valued in certain areas.
Yeah.
And so you just stick to those, right? Even if it means a sheer exhaustion for you, right? It's like, I was a U.S. history teacher for 8 years and we covered the Gilded Age, right? The Gilded Age is that it's all crap.
Ages.
Yeah. It's all crap inside and then you just cover everything with gold, right? And that's how masquerades work, especially people who go through those periods of loneliness and despair and then come out on the other side just wanting to love everybody. You can do that to the neglect of yourself, the absolute neglect of yourself, so that everything looks good on the outside and inside. You're just like, when you're alone, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm pouring from nothing,
So if you had to go back to that moment and talk to that individual who was going through that, thinking this is what were the things he needed to do, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I think, I'm starting to get into my upper 30s now and I'm still grappling with those things. I think if I could go back to that place, just being real with who you are, right? And I didn't have anybody telling me that, but you cannot change or heal who you like, the word's escaping me. You cannot heal or change who you pretend to be, right?
Yeah.
You can only truly change who you are beneath it all.
Yeah.
And so as long as you perpetuate the lie of this is who I am and everything's fine and I'm the strong guy and, I'm the comedian in the room and I'm the one who's going to make you feel loved, everything inside is just decaying. And, so being true to who you are, I think would definitely be step number one.
And how did you learn that for yourself?
By coming to the absolute end of myself and having nothing left to give.
Yeah.
So some personal failings in my life that were very out in the open that everyone could see, which led to a ton of shame, which led to panic attacks for the first time in my life. I lived with heart palpitations for 2.5 years where my body was just like, bro, we cannot go on like this. I went to the heart doctor. He's like, dude, your heart's strong as a horse. Your arteries are fine. Is everything okay? And you're like, everything's fine, bro.
Right.
And you just like go back, but just literally getting to the absolute end of myself, losing a lot of friends through that whole process and really just understanding that that's okay. Just getting all the way down to ground zero and being okay with that and kind of rebuilding from there.
I think that's one of the most unique things. And I think a lot of people who understand the concept of hope have felt the other side of it. When we talk a lot about despair, because that is hopelessness is the opposite of having hope. It's literally the opposite of dark and light. And so I know in my life as well, and some of the stories that I've seen, it's like you relate with your creator on such a deeper level when you're crucified by the people who said they love you. That's the hardest thing. I think there's a betrayal in that of when they put you on the cross while they're hiding everything that they've done behind their back, which really helps. It's kind of like the concept that I learned that you really understand your father a lot more when you become one. Mm-hmm. You can really get him when you become one, that they did their best they know to do. And when the hard times are really hard, the good times are really good, you can just identify with so much more. And I think that's what brings us closer and closer to understanding who God is in our lives, is by going through the experiences that the person that we're saying that we want to model, when we can actually live some of those moments and see some of those moments of like, God, please take this away from me because this is too much for me to bear.
Yep.
And he's like, this is your path. You got to just trust the path.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
And I'm sure you felt a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one thing I've really learned through the process, and I think we've talked about this before, but, most people, I think, especially once you reach a certain level of self-awareness or, I think it was Mark Twain, and I won't quote it accurately, but he basically said that change can only happen when somebody becomes truly disgusted with where they are.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's only from that place that you're motivated to do something. So I think once people get to that place and you start looking back at your childhood and realizing that the only way that you can move forward is to come all the way down to ground zero, and to intentionally and consistently work at keeping our hearts soft.
Yeah.
Right? Because it becomes so very easy to put up walls to protect your heart from disappointment, frustration, betrayal. But those same walls keep out love and affection and acceptance and peace, purpose, right? And so something I found was that the masquerades, which lead to like this gilded image, which lead to exhaustion and, people say you can't pour from an empty cup and all of those things lead to a place of putting up walls and a hardening of your heart. And until you can soften that heart, whether you're a believer or not, however you accomplish that, the heart has to become soft again.
Yeah, absolutely.
For any kind of growth to take place, in my opinion.
I had one of those moments a couple of months ago where I don't remember where I was at, but I just had a moment when I just like, why are you not feeling joy? Like you see these other people feeling joy, right?
Yeah.
And I started on this journey of like really just questioning like, well, why am I not feeling that? Then I started asking myself other questions like, extreme happiness, overwhelming love, like started realizing this theme that I wasn't really, I knew something was off that I wasn't experiencing in the way that other people experience it. And so what started really looking into this, I started realizing that I had a coping mechanism for so long of not wanting to feel that pain, the sadness, the anxiousness, that I'd learned how to really deal with it. I my own way of dealing with it. But the light bulb that went off is when I'm there trying to play in that middle zone and keep that vibration frequency really, really kind of timid right down the middle. Well, yeah, I protected myself from diving down to those lows, but I also robbed myself of experiencing the highs, the joys, the overwhelming love, the overwhelming gratitude, right? And I wish I could say that I turned the switch back on, but I've realized that 40 years of dealing with that. And it was at the age of 6, I became the man of the household. So I never really was equipped with that. And it's going to be a journey, but I'm seeing it like one day, one moment at a time, right? And I'll be driving down the road now and I'll hear something. I'll just start smiling. And I tell myself, I'm like, you would have never done that 6 months ago. Right?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I think people, I guess what I would say about that, and after hearing your experiences, I just think people need to give themselves more grace in the moments that they're going through and start looking for the small victories instead of the big victories, right? Like hope, I think, comes from like small kept promises to yourself, building confidence very slowly. It's not something, if we could all just go buy a big jar of hope off the shelf, like, yeah, great. That's not how it works though.
Yeah.
So, going back, what would we tell, that individual? Right? And so what's the journey been like since you started really understanding who Tommy is and like what's it evolved into? Like now as a man and a husband and a father, like, I guess what I'm saying is, how do you feel like, what is the big differences from who you were to what you've been learning on this journey?
Yeah. So I think it's, ever in process, right? I think we all would say that there are moments we wish we'd have been a better dad or a better husband, I think for me, it's just stripping away versions of myself that I think other people need from me.
Yeah.
Right. And really getting down to singular focus, right? Understanding that the idea of multitasking is an illusion, right? For most people, multitasking means when I'm with my family, I'm thinking about my job. And when I'm at my job, I'm thinking about my family. And it's like, they think it's this intermarriage. And really, it's when I'm with my family, I'm with my family.
Right.
And when I'm working the job, I'm on the job. And when I'm serving. And it's really just being where you are. I think just trying to find center has been incredibly beneficial to me. Like identifying your top purposes and passions and responsibilities, right? Being a father and a husband is like, it's not something you do flippantly. So identifying those and just sticking to those. You know, I think it was Elon Musk's ex-wife gave a TED talk and she was talking about how she noticed him, right? That he would say no very readily, very quickly. And for a while she was like, my gosh, this guy just says no to everybody and everything. And then she realized that by saying no, it was a more powerful yes. Because if I say no to the things that do not align with my purpose or they do not align to my goals or they don't help me serve others in some way, I am betraying my purpose and my people and my passions. And so understanding that every no to the wrong thing is a very powerful yes to the right thing has been a monumental shift for sure.
If you say no more immediately, you can always go back and change your mind.
Right.
You say yes all the time. What you find is you get yourself in some messes.
Right.
So one of the ones I think I've really learned over the last several years is boundaries are not a bad thing. I always thought boundaries was a bad thing just because people have abused that word, you know, and I think we talked about this, like boundaries are not to keep people out. You establish boundaries to keep the people that you love in and close to you, right?
Dr. Henry Cloud wrote a book, Boundaries, which I recommend to just about every single person in my coach. I just tell them, go read Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud. It's an amazing book. But the concept is that when you put horses inside of a boundary, if you think about it, when those horses feel protected and safe in that boundary, they'll literally walk up to the edge and put their tail up and scratch their ass on the back of the fence.
Yeah.
Versus when you see horses in an open field, if they're not running, they're all huddled together and they're all looking out because it feels dangerous. And so that's a huge reframe on boundaries for people is, oh no, boundaries are meant to protect you, not to enslave you. And it's not to keep you persecuted inside of this little box. It's actually to promote you and to protect you to go do the things that you're called to do. And so that's a huge, absolutely huge thing. And I think our generation treats that very differently than what our parents experienced. And we probably saw a lot of those boundaries violated and the things for us where we saw, you know, maybe that didn't go down the way, you know, that would have been the right way for that to go down. And then we learn and then we have those experiences. So that's huge. But yeah, if you've never read the book, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Absolutely. And I think another thing too is vantage point, right? So that 11-year-old kid, one of the main reasons I would feel hopeless is because of a poor vantage point, right? You know, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this as a father. I was thinking, you know, my daughter is 4 years old, so she's a little taller now, but especially when she was younger, if I'm at the kitchen counter doing something for her, fixing her breakfast or a snack or whatever, and she's on the floor just losing her mind because she thinks daddy's just playing around. She thinks daddy is just like doing who knows what, right? She has no idea that on the counter, I'm actually doing the thing that she's asking me for or desiring, right? If I pick her up and I show it to her and her vantage point changes, she realizes, okay, things are actually working out for my good. What I want is actually taking place, but she can't see it from her vantage point.
Okay.
Right. And so, you know, some people would call that your circle of awareness. I've heard it called your circle of awareness. You cannot think outside of your circle of awareness. Right. So being a poor, fat kid from Louisiana who's picked on and, you know, like you have no idea of things that actually exist outside your circle of awareness. So something very pivotal for me was reading people like Jim Rohn, looking into people who maybe had come from Louisiana or some other similar background who made it, who persevered, who, you know, educated themselves out of it or whatever the case may be. Sometimes if you can't find hope within yourself, you have to look for people who maybe have had a similar story, who have come out of that. And you just ride on their hope, you know, for as long as you have to.
I remember going to the grocery stores all the time. You talk about that circle of awareness and that just hit me because I just realized going to the grocery store with my mom, we were on WIC on food stamps. So I even learned at like 6, 7, and 8 years old to look for that little symbol next to the food on the grocery store aisle. Before I knew what that was, I remember just always asking for Apple Jacks, Lucky Charms, tricks, and just over and over and over. No, we can't have those. No, we can't afford those. And it'd be like, we're getting Cheerios or Corn Flakes. And on the bottom, it'd be like, oh man. But my circle of awareness wasn't like, oh, we're poor, we can't afford that cereal. It was just like, that's what it was. And other things started happening in my life where like owning a home, like there are people that parents had their own home and stuff. That was like, well, that was for other people. Just didn't really know anything about it, right? It was like, we rent, that's what we do. And so my circle awareness didn't really, really occur until I got to the point like almost college. Now in high school, I did start to realize, like you start realizing you don't have as much money and stuff like that. But like all the way up until then, I had used clothes, used toys. I wasn't really aware of it. Now where things really shifted was when like my back was up against the wall and I used to go to McDonald's on Mondays and get 10-cent cheeseburgers. I'd get like 20 of them because that's all I had money for. And I'd be broke and I'd eat those all week. Or I'd get tuna fish and put barbecue in there, barbecue sauce in there and mix it up and make barbecue or butter sandwiches. When my back was up against the wall, I think that's when my circle of awareness really started morphing in my confidence and my hope, because that's also where a lot of bad things were formed, where I was like, I'm going to muscle myself out of this. And like, this will never happen again. It was healthy, but it wasn't healthy. So I say that because sometimes hope means tapping into some things, even if we don't mean to, that is unhealthy. What was something unhealthy that you tapped into that you think did help you get to, where you are and get through those moments? Like work ethic, confidence was did you maybe step on some people's heads that did help you did get through life, but then realize later you made a mistake? Like what was some of those traits?
Yeah. The unhealthy stuff for me, I think would just tie back to being a version of myself that didn't serve me.
Yeah.
Right. And I think all of us enjoy serving people, right? And loving on people and ministering to people in some capacity or another. And I think I just became whatever version of myself I needed to be in those moments for the good of everyone else, even if that was to the detriment of myself. And I think that, people say it all the time that your talents can take you places where your character cannot uphold you. Right. And so what started happening at a very early age, right? 14, 15, 16 years old, singing in front of lots of people, being doted on, like, especially going from like never feeling loved and being bullied and all that stuff to like all of a sudden, Tommy goes away and then Tommy comes back and he's like this completely different person. Right. And oh my gosh, it's like all of this. It's like, wow, that feels amazing, And so what happens is your talents can open doors for you and move things so quickly that your character just can't sustain you there. And so what ended up happening for me was it took about 10 or 11 years, but that's exactly what happened, And so I think a lot of the unhealth came from just not being real with myself in those moments when you're alone, being strong enough to get a picture of your life the way that you want it and just stick to that, regardless of what you feel other people may need from you, especially if they're not in your inner circle,
It's
like
exhausting.
You talk about inner circle a lot. Very exhausting, very exhausting.
Because they say the chameleon, you're being a chameleon, like all the different hats, like who you're trying to please. They say a chameleon, if it has to just keep on changing colors, like it'll eventually die.
Yeah.
No, not really. I just made that up. Pretty good, wasn't it?
It's like 86% of statistics are all made up.
Yeah, they're made up on the spot. Yeah.
But who was your confidant in that season? Like when you were dealing with personal failure and then you were like coming out of that and then getting your confidence and your stride back. Like who was your rock? Who'd you lean on?
Yeah. So still working on the confidence coming back aspect. That's like a huge thing that I'm still working on, like 9 years later. But as far as confidant, I didn't really have anyone. It took probably about 2 or 3 years of me just kind of doing it by myself and then turning to some friends. And one friend in particular, I couldn't tell if it was from love or annoyance, but he was like, bro, you got to talk to my guy, so-and-so. He was like, this is the guy you need. Right. And so met up with a mentor when I still lived in Houston, who was very gifted with inner healing and those types of things. that really set me on a trajectory of kind of figuring some of this stuff out and going back to the places where it all started, right? Because even 9 years ago, when everything hit the fan and it all come falling apart, I had no idea why. There's like a lot of, because of the way I was raised and because of who I am as a person, just a lot of self-hatred. Like everything just turns inward, right? And it was just like, oh, this is all your fault. You should have been better. You knew better. All of those sorts of things, self-deprecating, without ever thinking like maybe something just broke a really long time ago. And I never addressed it or knew how to address it or had anybody kind of do that. And so that was pretty pivotal.
Looking back now, is there a place of where you're grateful that experience happened?
Yes. I'm incredibly grateful because, who knows where the trajectory of my life would have been had that not happened. Obviously, I'm not the kind of person who goes, I'm glad it happened. Everything happens for a reason. There are certain aspects of things that transpired that I'm guilty of that I wish I would have made better choices, right? But I am able now to look back and see the healing and growth that has been able to come from it for sure.
Do you feel like I see that like it seems to be really consistent in people's story is at some point you make a decision to say, this is actually good. Like, I hate that it happened, but I can't, it's like Madonna, if I could turn back time, but we can't.
Right.
Yeah. So the idea is that I think we're most in a position of we're most sovereign or most in line or in alignment with God of when we can look at a scenario and say that we willingly take responsibility to endure the suffering and say, you know what? I'm just going to accept that it happened and I'm going to accept that this is going to impact me for the better. And it's kind of the idea of that, like how suffering works is the pain doesn't go anywhere. The weight doesn't change. So you willingly accept it and it becomes the thing that you shoulder and it becomes part of your mission, or you just allow the weight to crush you. And I think a lot of people get to that place of like, am I going to allow this to crush me? Or am I going to have the courage to pick this thing up and actually shoulder it and deal with it and move through it? And I just want you to know you're doing better than you think you are.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. And I know that like at the end of the day, there's a lot that you have to work through and there's a lot that you're observing, but every day you're making a conscious decision to say one more step forward. I know that God's doing something unique in my life. I know that he's not done with me yet. I love that God uses broken moments in our lives to actually create the most beautiful memories for ourselves because it's true. That's what redemption is.
Right.
If Jesus came and he died and then nothing happened, come on.
Exactly.
Our entire North Star is to follow someone who died for the thing that he believed in most, to take on the weight and the burden of suffering at the highest degree. So what makes us think that it's going to be any different?
Right.
And we all go through something and the degrees of that something are all different for everyone, but we all go through a crushing. We all go through that absolute, like getting absolutely smashed on both ends.
Right.
But I just want you to know, man, like my desire for you is that you just keep stepping into it, that you actually shoulder it so much that it becomes the thing that you wear as like a cape behind you,
right? The
superhero of who God created you to be. And you just go like, yeah, this broken part of me was made into something that was absolutely beautiful. And that's what God does.
Yeah.
That's what he does. I think it's so fascinating that the things that we assume that we're most unqualified to do, that God uses us to actually qualify us to do the thing that he wants us to do. It happens all the time. So many, I've coached, 500 entrepreneurs. I can look at all their stories and go like, the thing that you came in, the day you came in that you said, this is what I want to do, but I just don't have the whatever, the courage, the faith, the audacity, the belief, the whatever to go do it. I'm like, that's the thing you're supposed to do.
Right.
So it all just comes to a moment and then you make a decision. Like I believe trauma is healed in a moment.
Yeah,
I just think it takes a lot of people a lifetime to get through it. And the best part about that is just forgiving ourselves.
Right.
And, when we stop judging ourselves, then we have the ability to stop judging other people. And that's what I do. That's why I just get up there and I'm like, I don't know, throw stones, throw hearts, throw flowers. I don't give a crap what you throw at me. I'm just going to do it. But it took a lifetime.
Right.
To get to that. And I don't have it all figured out. I just know that I don't judge myself based on my fractures.
Yeah.
I just go like, well, perfect. That makes room for God to do what he can do.
Absolutely.
I embrace it. And you're there.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing. That's what I want to encourage you with.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Let's get encouragement. I will say, like, I had somebody ask me one time, they were like, do you live with regrets? And I looked at them and I said, man, be completely 100% honest with you. That's one thing I don't And, my wife has always said, she goes, you have so much faith in everything. She goes, I could see it. There's always faith that gets so confident around you. And this person had asked me, he's like, well, how is it possible that you just don't regret anything in your life? And I said, I know that God's promises, they're written, like they're true. I really, really believe that because I've seen bad things happen and then they turned into the good. I went through bad things and it equipped me to be able to handle something else better. And so I stopped guessing. I don't know where it was in my life that I stopped like questioning that and guessing. But he said, so there is nothing whatsoever. And then he dropped this bomb on. He said, you said that your dad called your mother 10 minutes before he took his own life, right? And I said, yeah, I was sitting there. I remember 6 years old watching the cartoon. And he goes, do you regret not being the one that answered that phone? That one really, really rocked me. And I still am very torn and confused by it, but I still immediately go to, no, I wouldn't have changed that moment because I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to people about what happened growing up without a father and being a young boy and getting lost and trying to find validation and hope in things, making mistakes and putting that in the wrong things. None of that would have ever happened. And, I think that being a hope dealer or having hope in the moments of despair, just really, you have to tap into that thing that, this is a story that's being written and all of these things are promises that are happening no matter what. Right. And, I want to share that with people because sometimes I question myself and I'm like, well, there has to be something that you regretted and I can't find it.
Yeah.
I really honestly can't. Other than like times when I've said something stupid, like those little moments of regret. Yeah, I have those. But like, I don't have overall regrets on like decisions I've made in life or nothing. Because I know that book, that it was written way before me. Right.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can really, really share that through this podcast with people. So you're around a lot of, teenagers, adolescents, people entering adulthood right now. You deal with families in your profession on a daily basis. Like, where do you see the despair right now? Like, what are some of the things that maybe we didn't have to deal with that you see, them going through right now?
I don't know. Scripture says that there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
And so I don't ascribe to the idea that this generation is facing anything that previous generations haven't faced. Maybe we're just facing it in a different way.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's anything new, but I do think that most of the despair comes when we just focus on ourselves. When we just sit down and have a pity party or whatever you want to call it, like, oh me, oh my family, my problems, me, that's when we really start to lose hope. When we can turn that focus outward and step outside of ourselves and realize that life is never going to be perfect for anyone, right? And that if we keep waiting for some magical, perfect moment when we're totally at peace to love on other people or serve other people, that an entire lifetime will pass by while we just sit and stare in the mirror at ourselves. And so I think most of the despair comes from outside sources, right? So whether that be media or whoever else is just naysaying and only focusing on everything that's bad in the world. But it really happens when we just kind of sit with ourselves or our little circle or our little family and just focus on our problems.
Right.
I think, like you were saying earlier, if you need hope, go give it away to somebody.
Yeah.
Right. And the moment that you start focusing on other people, you're going to realize that it's not going to take you very long at all to find somebody who has a worse situation than you, far worse situation than you. Maybe they come from a worse situation. Maybe they're in a more intense situation and you just go, it really helps put perspective around where you're currently at. And that can bring a lot of hope.
So I was coaching a guy the other day and I was like, he's just kind of like even keeled, very quiet, just can fade in a lot. And I was really like, how do I help this person? And somebody that I look up to had told me, he goes, pick out 2 or 3 qualities that you admire in him or that he's really good at and focus on affirming him around those. And like it stood out. There was like 2 or 3 things that quickly stood out. And I did. I like affirmed him. Like I kind of told him, what I see in him, and you could see him light up. So I totally do believe that not just on our, like the moments we recognize it is like when you're like, why does this stuff happen to me? Like, sure, this happened to me, right? Those are the moments I think that you need to turn that around.
Absolutely.
Right?
To escape that victim mentality before it just takes deep root in your soul.
Just being aware.
I'll do that right now.
What's that?
Tell him the 2 things you see.
So I see almost on a daily basis when we're talking with each other, your words, they penetrate, they go immediately into somebody's heart. And, it's hard for me to put it into words like, because I feel it, right? Your words translate into feelings very quickly, which means like, what I mean is people don't have to get cerebral and try to figure them out. They don't have to question whether it's genuine. It just immediately penetrates and it starts filling you up, right? It's almost like you're able to impart superpowers into other people. So he'll send me voicemails and like they're genuine, authentic, like compliments and prayers. And I don't have to question it. So I can immediately take the words that I'm hearing for face value of what they are.
Yeah.
Right. You're an extremely devoted father. Like I admire that about you.
Thank you.
You don't focus on quantity, you focus on quality of time in things that you do. And that's rare in today's world. And I also like your authenticity and transparency, I mean, you're real. Like you'll tell me when there's like, hey, I need some prayer, or hey, this is not going well right now in my life.
Yeah.
And those are just a couple.
Thank you, Cap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Powerful. Yeah. Let's just say in 2 years, we're sitting back in the Hope wagon.
Yeah.
And you have this like, holy crap moment. And you look back in reverse and you think of where you're at today, but then you're 2 years in the future and you're sitting down and you say, Nick and Shawn, you guys won't believe what's happening in my life right now. What would that story be?
Man, primarily, I think it would be me operating fully in my gifts and talents, not being held back by any sort of shame or self-hate or condemnation.
So like, tell me the story from the gut level, like it's already happened. Like walk me through it. That just hit fast forward. We're back here. It's 2025.
Yeah.
What's going on in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I am making enough financially through speaking and loving on people and coaching people to be able to do full-time ministry without being a burden on anybody else. Right. So my life is like this perfect marriage of business coaching, loving on people, counseling people into their destinies. And that is making it financially able for me to just travel the world and love on orphans and people who are destitute. My children and my wife adore me because if they do, then I've just really hit the nail on the head.
What are some experiences y'all are having?
I think one of my greatest joys would be able to do ministry and service. Okay, so I am living in ministry and service with my family right alongside me.
And what are your kids doing in that?
The same thing, whatever they see dad doing, right? So they're loving on people. They're going on missions trips. They're seeing people in other parts of the world who have literally nothing, and they're giving of themselves to those people.
Where are some places you've gone?
Cuba, India, Spain.
What happened in Cuba?
In Cuba, we loved on some orphans and bought them a bunch of clothes and food.
Powerful.
Yeah.
What about your wife?
What is she doing or how is she feeling?
You're 2 years in the future. Tell me about what a day in the life of your wife was like.
Yeah. She's also living in her giftings, right? So she has found inner healing from her childhood self as well, right? And is just living in her giftings and talents as well, which is very creative, very design oriented, and she's a phenomenal mother. So she enjoys just spending her time and loving on her kids.
powerful. Is there any specific moment that jumps out to you in that timeline sprint? Again, stay in 2025. Is there any specific moment that jumps out to you that seems to be a catalyst for a big shift in your life?
Absolutely.
You see what it is?
Yeah. I think it happened actually in 2023, several weeks ago.
And what's the pairing or matching moment of where you say, holy shit, that moment got me here? What's that one?
It would be getting out of my own way.
Maybe picking up a guitar.
Maybe picking up a guitar. Yeah.
Maybe spending some time with people in that space.
Yep. Doing that. Putting pen to paper, writing some songs, being willing to open my mouth, feeling like I'm worthy enough to love on people the way that I love on Cap. Right? And not being held back by that, because there's a lot of people who need to feel like Cap feels when I talk to them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And for 9 years, I have very aggressively and intentionally and purposefully kept myself from doing.
I give you a gift that my dad gave me because I struggled with this severely for my whole life. And one day I was talking to my dad and I was like, I got to figure out a way to like allow my heart of ministry to show up and then just, that's who I am. And I want that to bleed through in what I do. He said, Nick, you're an oracle for God. Just open it. So I just give that to you to say, brother, you're an oracle for God. Just open your mouth. What's wild about the suppression of the voice, which is the number one challenge, I think, in the world right now, is the only way to cure suppression. I tell you the truth.
Right.
So at some point, there's going to be a point of where you find a way to free yourself. And that will come in the format of you realizing the pain of the people on the other side who need you and the shame. It's one or the other. And you're standing right in the middle. You're either going to hold on to that or you're going to say, screw it, let's do it. And you're just going to lean into the idea that what someone else needs on the other side is far greater than the pain of the shame that I felt in the past.
Right.
But honesty is the only way to get there.
Absolutely.
So just embrace it. And it's just as true that you're an oracle for God as that you had a moment of whatever that was, whether it's lapse, judgment, or whatever. Yep. And the greatest way that we can forgive ourselves is understanding that we have done that for other people who have done us wrong too. And you know all this shit. So just open your fucking mouth.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, that's the embrace. What did I say right when you first met me? You want to change the world? Encourage 5 people a day.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because it's not about all the way up here.
The HopeDealer mission.
It's a HopeDealer mission. It's above down,
Right.
inside out. As soon as we're outside, in and up, that's where life works in reverse. So we're going like, God, okay, this is my entire strategy in business. It sounds so insane. Every time I talk about it, I'm like, people, they probably don't believe this is true. This is literally how I work. I sit and I wait. I go like, okay, God, who do I need to encourage today? And I go through my phone book and I'll start at the top if I don't see someone new too.
Right.
Boom. I've talked to this person in 6 years and I'll just be like, yo, God put you on my heart today. I don't know why. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know if you're on the highest high, you're on the lowest low. I just want you to know that I believe great things are on the way for you.
Absolutely.
And then message me back like, what? The world is starving, absolutely starving for encouragement.
100%.
So
Yeah. Whoa. That's good.
it's so foundational.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage you to go do it.
No,
No, you
absolutely.
don't need a permission slip to encourage people.
100%.
Yeah.
Like you're either part of the cure, or you're part of the disease. Want to be part of the cure? Just follow Big Wayne's advice. That's my dad.
Big Wayne.
Yeah.
God just told me something really powerful. So he's like, see if I can get the words behind it. So when you speak those words, Tommy, those words are not heard by the deaf ear.
Right.
Those words are heard by the living ear. And so may that encourage you that when you say something and you feel you're an oracle and you just need to Just say it. Like, if the ears are deaf, the ears are deaf.
Right.
But it's the ones that are alive that are waiting to hear that. It's kind of like they say, it's absolutely incredible how we don't do things or chase our dreams because of people that don't give a shit about us and how they might judge us.
Yeah.
But what about the people that are encouraging us? We're robbing them by not trying to be our true self.
Yeah.
Right? That's where I got that from. And when God was just telling me that, it's like the same thing with our words. It's going to fall on people out there and be like, who's he think he is? Those are deaf ears.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's that one person, that we've all heard that in our lives have happened. And we're like, man, I thank God that he said that at that moment.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine the tragedy, of having a word that would have changed the course of someone's life, changed their life from, taking their own life. Right. It's like, I think about abortion. I'm like, can you imagine the talent and the world changers and the kingdom changers that were extinguished? Right. And so we are literally like extinguishing that, in my opinion, when we abort opportunity to say, I need to say this right now. This is why the world, what brings me righteous anger? Like, you asked me that question. This whole thing where it's like, I don't want to tell someone something because it might hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
Oh, so you rather just let them keep doing what they're doing and completely destroy their life?
That's not love.
No.
Well, a lot of people are direct. They just don't know how to be direct with love.
Right.
So they just hit the jugular versus hitting the heart. It's like, you're just off just a little, just aim a little lower. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge. Because most people are not compassionately curious. So they're not in it to help them. They're in it to be right. And that's the miss.
Yeah.
That's the direct, but without love.
Yep.
When it's like, you ask and you seek for permission. This is what I ask people a lot when I want to speak into their life. And it's like one of those things where this might hurt a little, but I'm just because I love you. I ask them, do I have permission to speak into your life?
Yeah.
And as soon as they say yes, guess what? Just hit the heart and didn't hit the head or the throat.
Right.
So then they're like, yeah, absolutely. And I go, great. And then I use this, actually, it's an organizational change communication model. It's called ADKAR, ADKAR. And the first one is awareness. And then it's desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So you start with the awareness, then you go to like, here's my desire in communicating this. Here's what I need you to know. Here's how I want to support you. And then you reinforce, I believe in you. And you throw a little sandwich, the compliment sandwich in there. And every single time it works. So I'm like, I tell people sometimes, I'm like, say what you really want to say, throw it into ChatGPT, and then say, now say this in ADKAR. And there you'll get a message that can be delivered with directness and love where someone can actually hear you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part. I've had a lot of people in my life who are like, will give me advice about things, but they can be so blatantly direct that I'm like, I can't hear you.
Yep.
So it's like, because you just punched me in the mouth, you didn't put your arm around me, you missed, right?
The relationship wasn't there first.
Even if relationships there sometimes, like I remember like sometimes my mentor, by the way, who suicidal, gun in his mouth, his neighbor knocks on his door and goes, I don't know, God told me to come here, man. And I'm just telling you, your life has meaning and purpose.
Wow.
Saved his life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Saved his life.
Remarkable.
I mean, we'll have Tony on the Hope Wagon. So you never know with that moment, but the idea, I don't remember what the hell I was talking about.
Well, we're talking about, how people like
ADKAR, compliment sandwich.
Yeah. We call it the shit sandwich.
It's like, sometimes it's like trying to get too quick to the result versus taking the time. Like the key to the heart is empathy. Empathy takes time and understanding. It's wet ground. It's nutritious soil that can receive a seed that's planted into it. And so sometimes that comes through relationship. And sometimes, I have a friend who she's the #1 mental performance coach in the world. She had someone drive through the Starbucks line after she got out of grad school. And he was in the Starbucks line and he said, so did you go to college or, just trying to like chop it up and ask questions. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, so what do you have your degree? And she's like, sports psychology. He was like, oh, you got one of those degrees. One of the ones you'll never use. And that burned her. She's a competitor. She's super tough. That got right underneath so hard, but sometimes people are motivated by that chip on the shoulder.
Oh, gosh.
And so that pushed her forward in a really good way. But it also could have been like, we have those moments, but we also have the other people who are in our lives who say, you can do this different. You can do it better. When I started coaching her, she was making $60,000 a year. And within I don't know, 7 or 8 months of work with April to December, we went to 685,000. The next year she did 1.7 million.
Wow.
So yeah. Oh, she's
Good little chip.
extremely talented. But that's the deal, is that sometimes you meet people and you're going to hit the hard moment. And then sometimes you're going to meet people where that soil is fertile, and you're going to help them literally have quantum leaps in their life because of your investment and your words and your kindness, and you're pushing them forward and you being there for them. She was already extremely talented. I just told her that there's more possibility.
Tough love.
Yeah. And I had the easy job of just going like, all right, let's prove this motherfucker wrong.
Right?
Yeah, because people have to be open to that. While you were talking, I was thinking there's a story in the Bible. Jesus walks up to the paralyzed man at the pool of Bethesda. He's obviously paralyzed. He's been there for years. And Jesus asks him the silliest question. He says, "Do you want to be made well?" What do you think, bro? I'm sitting here. I can't move my legs. I'm trying to get to this pool. Nobody will take me. Why are you asking rhetorical questions? Just fix me, And I think, and scholars have a million opinions about why he asked this question. But I think one really valid point is because people have to be at a place where they are ready for wholeness. Are you ready for the life that's going to come, that's going to look very different than the one you are currently in if I make you well and whole, right? If I encourage you, if I give you this truth and love, are you actually ready? Is the soil ready?
Yes.
Are you ready to go out and get a job and buy your lunch tomorrow?
Yeah.
Are you ready to have to be intentional with your life? Or have you become so accustomed to sitting here in this place, relying on other people for alms or money or whatever the case may be? And I think people have to be ready to be made whole.
Talked about. And it's like he said the other day, we were talking about this, and he's like, I don't have any capacity to talk people into trying to be great, and I was like, man, I so relate to you. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You nailed, when they're ready, how do you get people to be ready? I have some loved ones in my life that all the support's there, all the tools, we're all there waiting, but they're just not ready. So it's like pushing behind a donkey, right? That doesn't want to walk. You encourage them.
That's it. Someone's got to be the one speaking to them, saying, there's a different possibility available for you. The readiness comes from, I think there's two aspects. There's the fear, right? So some people aren't ready because they're afraid. Then some people just lack belief. And then some people just don't want it. And so I had a coach, Robert White. He's probably 83 years old now. He brought the human potential movement to the United States from Asia in the 70s. He mentored 1.7 million people. I mean, he built one of the biggest coaching businesses in the world. If you know Landmark Forum, he built the competitor to Landmark. Yeah. And he was first, and then Landmark came, and there's so much story around that, but I can't tell half of those stories because I'll let him tell Monday. But the thing that he told me is there's a difference between commitment and readiness. Some people are committed, but they're not ready. A way that my other mentor, Tony Grebmeyer said, are you interested or are you committed? That's the difference between readiness. And you can't shift someone's readiness. Life will have its way of shifting people's readiness. When they are crushed to the point of where they cannot take, Bishop Jake said, you take a licking and keep on taking. When you get literally smashed into the ground so hard, something's going to force you. But that's typically an external that brings an internal response. If someone's not asking for more, not everybody is asking for more.
Yeah.
Some people are asking for less. So readiness is a very interesting concept. And I'm curious for you, what got you ready to make a shift in your life? And I just kind of look at it, was it you understanding the potential of what you were capable of and you seeking the outcome in your life that you wanted? Or was it the opposite side? Because a lot of human behavior says that we are most willing to do things for other people rather than for ourselves. So the question is, who are you doing it for? So was it for you, or was it for other, the redemption that you can bring to others?
Yeah. For me, it's other people. I'm generally much more motivated by helping others than myself. Even in a healthy way, right? So not necessarily the unhealthy version of that from being a teenager, right?
Helping and pleasing.
100%. Yeah. Pleasing versus serving or helping. Honestly, and I think, again, scripture, some plant, some water, but God gives the increase, right? And I think loving on people and encouraging people, like he said, And then when the time is right, he'll make it right. And I think the biggest thing, especially for people that we love, that are like in that inner circle that we talk about, is just letting them know that we're there, so that when he makes the time right, or when life makes the time right, they just know that they can come to you. And you've made that known, that I'm here for you when you're ready. But for me, it was, over the last several months, people like Cap and others just being like, I really see this in people that haven't known me my whole life, being like, wow, I really see this in you. Or man, when you speak, like things happen, or I feel something. Or, someone told me just a couple of weeks ago that, the way that I talk and deliver things is like with humility, but like very effective, and just all those sorts of things, getting to a place of being like, you know what, I think this could really help people if I step outside of myself and get over myself. And so for me, it's definitely very much about other people.
So what are you committed to?
I am committed to the process.
And what are you ready for?
I think I'm ready for just about anything. Honestly, I like truly, I'm at this place where I'll be 38 years old in a couple months, and I feel like I've wasted a lot of time. Right. And then so I have to really keep self-deprecation and self-hatred and like all of that stuff at bay. But I do feel like I've wasted time, like the last 9 years of my life, while they are immeasurably beautiful in many ways. I have 2 beautiful children that are just, bro. I mean, it's just like God smiled upon the earth, and I know you guys feel the same about your kids, and so there's a lot of redemption that's already happened in those 9 years. At the same time, I look back at those 9 years, whether that be for the kingdom or just my community or whoever I just feel like there's been time wasted. And so I'm here for the process, and I'm ready for anything.
Do you believe that time is real?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't. And I'll explain it, because this is, whenever we go to feel, then I reverse it and go, well, what's the belief?
Right.
I don't believe time is real. So I think that all we ever have is right now.
Right.
So the past is just a memory, and the future is just a projection. So all we really have is every physical, literal second that we're in. So I go like, okay, well, the greatest moment in order to make any shift, or if you're ready for anything, is to just drive it into the present moment. I'm thinking, when you're on your way home, are you going to encourage 5 people?
Right.
Because that's like I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready for anything. I'm like, dang, he's ready for anything. Like, so now I'm like, all right, let's put this dude on.
Yeah.
Like wherever we can.
Yeah.
Like, cause if you're ready, then like you're ready.
Yeah.
And then let's hit it. And so I just look at that concept, and that's my personal belief. So, cause there's been times, bro, where I look back and I'm like, man, my kids, how is my daughter already 8 years old? Like, I don't understand. And of course, you hear everybody say, they're already grow up so quick. How? Because literally I watched a video today. I was like, that was 3 years ago. And I swear to God, that feels like a month ago.
Yeah.
That feels like a month ago. How did that happen? And then I quickly can get back into my space and go, time is not real. And it's not a deflection. It's just a better thought. When Einstein created E = mc squared, he was dismissed from the scientific community for over 10 years. They called him a psychopath, and they said he was literally had lost his mind. And he learned that thing. If you go, right, you know the shit, U.S. history. So there's parts of this, although he wasn't in the U.S. But the idea is that when he did E = mc squared, he said that he had an out-of-body experience of where he saw the time and space continuum, literally from sitting on top of himself. Mm-hmm. He escaped time in order to see how it operated. So I go like, well, if I look at the story of Christ, like it's as true today as it was ever. I see the redemption of what he did 2,000 years ago every single day.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like, it's all right here. So that's helped me so much not go to those moments of going like, what did I do today? And because that just fills me with anxiety and frustration. And the feeling, I always say, you are the creator of your emotions. You're not the victim of them.
Absolutely.
So I'm saying I'm creating this feeling, and I go, okay, well, what's my belief? If my belief is that I've wasted time, it's going to continue. So my belief is that time is not real, that I can maximize the exact moment that I'm in. It gets me like really, really sharp and just staying dialed in. So hopefully that's of encouragement to you.
Yeah.
So say, screw it. Time's not real. I've done everything the best that I know to do it in the moment that I knew to do it. So when I leave here tonight, I'm going to encourage 5 people on the way home.
Yeah.
100%. That's the mega shift, bro.
I've already encouraged 5 people today, so we can just do 5 more on the way home. Yeah. You know, and that's like from a kingdom aspect, you know, like we know that the kingdom is now and coming, right? It is both now and coming. You know, and then from a, you know, because of my counseling degree and background, like a very good counseling mechanism to help people understand is if you just stepped into your life today, you're like this outside observer and you stepped in and you're aware of everything that's happened before, but you're not personally responsible for it. How would you help you just pick up from right now and make the back half or whatever better or more? Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot, and I think about the future. I always feel like I have to walk faster, talk faster, get more done because I feel like there's an hourglass and like the sand, that's literally how I feel all the time. And I'm like, something could be, you know, the Lord could have a plan for me tomorrow. It could be, you know, 30 years down the road. And I got a lot to get done.
Yeah.
And I asked you that question earlier on like, what is one of those things? That's one of those things that motivates me and does get a ROI, but at the same time, it's not healthy all the time either. Like there's a Sunday, sometimes I just need to sit and cuddle with my kids and watch TV and watch a movie. I don't need to be up, down, and going to do something, you know? Yep.
I struggle with that.
You too?
Hard. And what I've noticed from reading a couple of books over the last few weeks is that for me, it stems from what people would call like an orphan spirit or an orphan mentality. So even though I had a really great dad, there were nights, like I've told you before, where we went to sleep and we didn't have dinner, right? Like we just didn't eat. There was no food in the house. And so I had a very loving father. He's one of the best men I know. He loves people better than even I can. I mean, he's tremendous at people and serving people, but he just couldn't provide at a high level. All the clothes I had were hand-me-downs. If I went to church camp, it was because somebody else paid and sponsored it. And so at a very early age, it was just like, who the frick is going to take care of me? Dad loves me.
Wow.
Dad loves me a lot, but he can't take care of me.
Right.
Right? We're on food stamps. I got to go with mom under the 210 bridge in Lake Charles, this little shack, and get these literal paper food stamps that look like Monopoly money, right? Like Dad loves me and dad is here, but he can't provide for me like these other kids' dads can. And learning that even though I have a good father, that it produces a very strong orphan mentality and spirit that says, if it's going to be, it's up to me. Because if Cap stops, who's looking out for Cap?
Right.
If Tommy stops, who's looking out for Tommy?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that helps you at all, but it's starting to help me to realize that I can rest in Father's heart.
Right.
And know that if I take a day or two, that there is somebody, something that is looking out for me.
That's a good word. It's a really good word.
Right? And that's the whole essence of Sabbath, if you're a believer and you study scripture, is resting in the fact that I can take a day off and he's got me. He's got me.
Kind of like when you're super busy at work and then you like have to go on vacation.
Or you got to go to the bathroom really bad.
I'll go on vacation. I'll be like, how am I going to go on vacation? You know, there's just so much, and I'll just turn it over to the Lord. I'll be like, well, I'm going. The first time it ever happened was when I went on a cruise ship. It was, oh shit. And it didn't have any Wi-Fi. And
like tweaking?
I was like for the first couple of hours. And then after a while, I was like, okay, well, whatever. And I remember the peace I had that week. When I went to Israel, this was the first time I went to Israel. You didn't bring your cell service over there. This was in 2008. And it was like, if you did, you were going to pay a lot of money for it. So we turned it off. I remember being over there for 10 days, like without my cell phone. And I was like, wow, okay, the world didn't fall apart. Right. And
that's something I'm still living in very much.
Yeah.
I'm excited to never have a phone again.
Oh, it's on my
I just want everyone to follow me around and they can publish a bunch of stuff, but I don't even want to be in that.
Right. The flip phone's on my bucket list. Definitely on my bucket list.
Yeah.
Flip phone.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to do that. I think it's a matter of just a couple of years.
And I think whether someone is a believer or not, I think if people get real honest with themselves, this orphan mentality thing, for people like us who feel like we have to produce or always be on and can't even take a step back to be like, I'm pretty sure if someone just gave you a blank check and they were like, you would choose to spend time with your family. Like, at least a majority of your time, right? And doing that and feeling guilty about it, or doing that and feeling like you should be somewhere else, whether you're a believer or not, I would strongly wager that it's tied to some sort of orphan feeling, right? Of like, nobody's got my back.
There's always that. Do you have that feeling of, you fight the feeling of it's all going to go away?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah. That might be one of the roots.
It is. It is.
And then I have
sure.
to talk myself into it. I was like, is it really going to go away? You know, and if it does, what's the worst thing that happens?
If it does,
I got my family, right? I know that we'll still love each other. You asked that question earlier and it really got my mind going. I was like, you know, man, it's 2025. You know, I'm traveling with my kids and my wife. I'm able to work from my computer where I want. I get to do my living by breathing into other people's lives and helping them, you know, get through challenges and adversities in the workplace or their careers or their vocation. Serving on at least twice a weekend where we're, you know, giving away, distributing a tractor trailer truck of food. You know, I want to get back to that again. Yeah, just the freedom to operate in God's gifts and talents without all the other restrictions.
Absolutely.
You know, like people need me. Yeah, people need me, but I don't want to be like, people need me in an office that I have to drive 30 minutes across town in traffic. I want the people that need me, the ones that are like, I need your smile on a Saturday morning when you're helping me load these groceries up in the back of my car. Right.
And that's, I'm probably going to butcher his name. There's an Indian poet. I won't even try his first name, but his last name is like Tagore or something like that. And I'll probably misquote this as well, but we'll get the point. He said, I slept and I dreamed that life was joy. I woke and found that life was service. So I acted and found out that service was joy. And I think that's kind of like a theme that we've been talking about all throughout the night, whether that's how does somebody find hope and we say, you go give it away to somebody else, right? Or I want to spend my life just giving my gifts and talents away without all these other restrictions of things that I feel are dutiful, right? And I think understanding that life is service and that the service is what brings the greatest joy, I think is a way to really unlock hope for yourself and for other people.
That's good. Closing thought?
I think that was the one.
Very.
Our boy Tagore. I may be mispronouncing it. We'll look it up.
Say Deepak Chopra. Well, I'm extremely honored that you came to the Hope Wagon.
Thank you, Cap.
And I'm extremely honored to have you in my life.
Same.
And your genuine friendship, you know, means a lot to me. I look forward to my messages from you because I know they're going to transcend my heart and they're going to make my day. And I really appreciate you coming here and just sharing a little bit about your journey and authenticity and transparency.
Thank you. It's been a privilege to talk with both. Yes.
We hope you'll go out there and continue dealing some hope to other people.
You know it.
Will you join the cartel?
Absolutely. Let's
go.
go.
All right. All right, folks. I'm Shawn.
Nick.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hope Wagon. See ya.
Good stuff.